What's going on, everybody? My name is Linwood. Thank y'all so much for being here, and I hope that you are so ready for the next hour that is jam-packed full of hope, positivity, optimism, gratitude, mental attitude, and a mental check, baby. So pull up a chair, grab a couple of shots, kick your shoes up, let your hair down, and relax, because this will be the best hour that you have ever received, and I'm super excited for it, baby. Woo!
Joseph JAFFE is not famous. I'm kind of famous. I'm Jerry Springer. And JAFFE is no host. He'd be lucky to be in my audience, let alone on my show. Well, maybe he's crazy enough to be on my show. I take that back. And that's not a good thing.
But he's officially... Well, Peter, you might be the first person on this planet that has ever shut me up for this long. Good old Heraclitus, I tell you, that wild and crazy guy.
If I came to you and I gave you $10,000 for 20% of the company,
deal. Yeah. So, is that a verbal?
Younger than us, sorry to say, Joseph.
What, younger than 20?
Joe, we're just trying to help you because clearly you've lost control of the conversation.
I never, you know what? With all due respect, I never had control of the situation. Doesn't mean I'm gone. What doesn't kill me makes you stronger.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Joseph JAFFE is Not Famous. But my next guest, of course, is. It is a Thursday evening. And for some reason, the shelves behind me, is it just me or do the shelves look a little skew? Or maybe my head is skew, I'm not really sure. I kind of feel like that's the kind of day that I'm having right now. It is slightly skew. I know what's going on. How about that? There we go. The camera. It was the camera. Dope, as Homer Simpson would say. Manif says, that's not good. That isn't good. Even if Jerry Springer, actually it's good when Jerry Springer says it. So I just got back from teaching my international business class. I've got my glass of wine. I just kind of broke my roadcaster. I'm gonna have to try and figure out exactly what I did. But for some reason, I may not be able to hear my guest, which just means, Dan, you can just talk as long as you want. Because I won't be able to shut you up. And why would I? I'm excited for you to come on the show. And not because today is Wonderful Weirdos Day. September 9th is Wonderful Weirdos Day. Keep Austin weird. That's all I know. But everybody on the show, nobody's weird here. And maybe we're all weird. Who knows? But it is going to be a great show. Now, yesterday and every day, you can win JAFFE coin when you see a QR code pop up on the top right-hand screen, right-hand side of the screen. You will follow a bunch of instructions. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to do it a little bit later. So you got to watch the show. This is done to reward people that are tuning in live, because this is the streaming era, and in the streaming era, we'll do it live. Which is why exactly, if you buy a JAFFE coin and send it to me, I'll send you back 3 in return, and you don't even have to buy. You just have to watch the show and participate. This is all about expanding the JAFFE economy. So more on that shortly. But we're going to focus tonight on Mr. Dan Pontefract. And you know what? I'll talk about Dan in just a moment, but just to give you a little sneak preview, only 2 shows next week because of a Jewish holiday. And David Spinks on Monday, Francine Hardaway on a Tuesday, and then a little bit of a break on Wednesday and Thursday. And we are booked out well into November. But as I was saying, Dan Pontefract is my guest tonight. He is a leadership strategist. He's an author. He is a thinker. He is a big thinker. And we kind of think the same, which is just awesome. And then the very famous Mariah Hooser, she will tell you one way to remember her last name. She is a creator. She is the singing bartender, and she's going to be performing 2 numbers for us a little bit later. So as always, you know at this point that my seated soliloquy is inspired by my guest. And tonight, we're going to talk about one that is called resign. My guest tonight is awesome. And not just because he uses the word bollocks very liberally. He was referring to the Great Resignation. And I won't steal his thunder except to say that we are definitely cut from the same cloth when it comes to our outlook on the corporate life, especially as it relates to the employer-employee relationship. The funny thing about change is how slowly it happens, and then overnight it seems like a dramatic shift and a shock to the system, like that button popping on your pants, or the boiling frog that one moment is alive and kicking and enjoying a day in the hot tub, and the next is being served on a plate at a fancy French restaurant. The corporation is filled with tired, old, and out-of-date benchmarks and milestones of what was considered to be a best practice once. Like the grand old retirement party and presentation of a gold watch. As I wrote in Built to Suck, unless it's a gold Apple Watch, you're shit out of luck. When we look back at corporate life over the last decade or two, the signs were all there. So many things that just didn't make sense, and yet nobody questioned them. And none more so than the commute, the dreaded trip on the Metro North into Manhattan. Incidentally, I'll be on the Metro North this coming Monday for the first time since February 2020. I'll be teaching brand strategy at NYU School for Professional Studies. And don't worry, I've low-key teed up on my iPhone for the trip back to Connecticut. In this post-apocalyptic world we're currently wallowing through, we need to slay some corporate employee relations sacred cows, and quickly. A good place to begin is the commute. We either have to reduce it or reduce the time spent in the office, or both. Or we can figure out ways to make it a little more enjoyable and or suck less. Autonomous or self-driving cars is one solution, but then again, so is reinstating the bar car, introducing powerful and reliable Wi-Fi, and what about reclining seats? Hey, if the movies can do it, why not the train? If we want to do something about the Great Resignation, we cannot resign ourselves to maintain the status quo, or we'll all be faced with a kind of pink slip that will put us all out of business for good. And now it's time to welcome Dan Pontefract. And I cannot wait to hear what he has to say about the soliloquy, but of course, the Great Resignation. Dan Pontefract is the founder and CEO of the Pontefract Group, a firm that improves the state of leadership and organizational culture. He is the best-selling author of 4 books, Lead, Care, Win, Open to Think, The Purposeful Effect, and Flat Army. A renowned speaker, Dan has presented at 4 different TED events and also writes for Forbes and Harvard Business Review. He was previously the chief envisioner and chief learning officer at TELUS. Prior to that, he was a senior leader at SAP, Business Objects, Crystal Decisions, and BCIT. He's Canadian and will say sorry a lot. Gee, I hope not. Dan, welcome to the show.
Joseph, what a delight. What an intro. I can't wait to go back to the recording and hear that again so that I can then steal it and just play it for other people. Well done.
Maybe you can, I was going to say, maybe you can say sorry about having to say sorry a lot.
So where do we start on the bollocks comment, to be honest? Because I got a lot to unleash here.
I know you do. Well, first of all, let's acknowledge Manif. He said, never knew we had a national day. 9/9 is saved for next year. And I think he must be referring to weirdos. And by the way, if we're all weird, then are we not all normal?
Whoa, it's a very interesting point. I've always thought of myself as a weirdo. when I was growing up, I was sort of that guy that people looked at and said, why is he doing that with his hair?" When I had hair, because growing up in the '80s, it's a tough thing to do if you're like me. And you know what? I've always tried to be myself. I love what you said earlier. It's time for many of us to be ourselves. So why don't we make Weirdo Day every day for so many of those leaders and employees stuck in those ghastly organizations, sir?
I agree. I agree. In fact, I think maybe if 364 days of the year were actually Weirdo Day, then maybe on 9/9 we could have Normal Day. Why not? Let's single out the people that are, that are boiling froggers, that are status quoers, etc. And speaking of status quo, actually not speaking of status quo, there is a QR code above your head right now. If you point your phone to it, you will get a JAFFE coin. Don't spend it all at once. But as Manif will tell you, the JAFFE coin is going places. Where? I have no idea. But anyway, there's the QR code. I think we should get into the meat and the potatoes of this discussion. But before we do, Dan, let's find out a little bit about you. Let's find out those fun facts that nobody knows or nobody knew until tonight. For example, here's an interesting one about you. Turns out that you taught yourself how to play piano by ear.
I did, and I just believe that anything is really a problem to solve, I suppose. And when I was a kid, there was an organ in our house, and I thought, well, it's just math, really. And so you start with the Beatles and you work your way up, I suppose, because John and Paul wrote some seriously cool melodic tones, but also the early stuff's pretty basic. So once you can figure out "Love Me Do" and "Help" and songs and lifts like that, it's pretty easy to figure out how the music works. And so can't play many on guitar, but certainly piano.
So by the way, Andy Foot wants to know, is bollocks a uniquely British, what's that word? Exhortation. What the hell is an exhortation?
Exhortation. I think an exhortation is, a word that sort of expands upon, something that's maybe not so nice. And I guess, bollocks, basically, it's definitely British, and that's where I hail from, although the accent says nothing of that. But bollocks is kind of like a way to say screw you in Canadian and Americanese. No way will that ever happen. That's what bollocks is.
I'm good with that. Now, Chris Chanel says, "Wow, I think it's amazing how some people learn to play instruments by ear." But Dan, with all of these, by the way, Andy says emphatic communication, I guess, is exhortation.
There you go. Thank you,
Andy. We learned something new. But I want to go back to this for a second, because there's something to be said about just trying something, winging it, teaching yourself, proceeding without the precedent, without the best practices, without the training. Maybe we call it street smarts. There's a learning in there, and there's an insight in there, I think, Dan, in terms of how corporations should think about change and how they should go about being able to say, why don't you just try it out and try it yourself, as opposed to, overthinking it and waiting for the formal application. What do you think about that?
Well, you can start with what's not happening and work our way back to that. There's far too many leaders and organizations that are missing a couple of the DNA genes that I think would be very helpful. One is remain curious, and the other is embrace change. And they're really like yin yang. They're twin sisters, they're cousins, whatever you want to call it. When we remain curious, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's sort of the lifelong continuous improvement learner attitude. But then when it's backed by the embrace change quotient, Joseph, what you've got there is, an attribute, a highlight, if you will, that perfection is not the quest. Embracing the opportunity of what might be actually creates that sort of innovative, let's just do it type of culture. And, there's too many examples whereby we get stuck in, well, why change now? Why learn something new? Like, what's the point? So maybe weirdly, analogously, that kind of learning to play piano by ear as a kid actually triggered what I believe are two of the more important DNA traits that organizations and people need to have: embrace change and remain curious, as I said.
Well, there's that whole idea of causation does not equal correlation. But I'm wondering if there actually is a correlation between curiosity and the ability to embrace change, or maybe the corollary of that would be someone that resists change. Is that someone who almost by definition, working backwards, is not curious?
Well, I do think that it's possible for people to unlearn, as Toffler said, what we learn in order to relearn something new, right? But I also believe that we get stuck. We think that we can't learn, or we shouldn't learn, or we're too busy, or what have you. That curious advantage or curiosity mindset is something that not only can be taught, but I believe can be, to use the word again, embraced. But there are the impediments in the way of that. I think they just stretch here to between the Pacific and the Atlantic, and I think we get too caught up in this. Well, I can't do this, or my organization isn't curious. Well, just like honestly, try. Why not? Why not just unleash yourself to something that you may not be familiar with? And I mean, for me, I've been in situations as an executive where I've done things and had my hand slapped and had like serious reprimand. But in the end, and it's going to sound weird and quite pretentious and very un-Canadian of me, Joseph, but I was right. Like sometimes when you just push and say, I'm not sure what's over the other side of that hill, but I'm willing to give it a chance just to see. Why don't we do it? And then you're like, oh, or even, a culture that isn't very curious, but, if you try and unleash an idea or say, hey, maybe this would be a good idea. If you stop and don't allow yourself the opportunity to push the idea, at least to the table, well, that is actually you cutting off your curiosity quotient and your embrace change quotient in the same realm. So for it to begin, you have to get past well, this will never fly, or this is going to be negated at the table, or someone's going to diss me right away. I'm going to get my head cut off because this idea is too crazy. That, to me, speaks volumes to, are you curious? Are you a learner? But then we're getting into the next one, right? The next kind of trait I would look for people to improve upon, and that's courage and gumption. So if
I'm like, there's so many things that I just like. I mean, courage and conviction, but there's one more thing that I have to just prompt you. Not even prompt, but I would say probe. I'm more of a prober than a prompter. Unless I'm using a teleprompter, not a teleprober. I don't even know what that means. But there's something else about you, Dan, which is you hate waiting.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm thinking before courage, there is this idea of impatience. So I'm almost like I'm getting to dissect the brain of a genius without actually having to
lobotomy.
Exactly. I'd rather what's the old line? I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. I had to think about it. But there's curiosity. There is the ability to embrace change, and then there's a third thing, and I wonder if they're all interconnected, which is impatience.
Well, I'll call it professional impatience, right? I mean, no individual really does them any good if they walk around making decisions based on their amygdala and not using their prefrontal cortex of judgment and sort of judicious creativity. You know, inventing a 5-wheel car just for the hell of it isn't really smart, right? And, you know, that's not helpful to anyone. But for me, that sort of notion of hating to wait is actually aligned with that curiosity. I hate to wait to not learn. I hate to wait to not try something. You know, the old technology adoption curve. Well, I am as far this way with the camera as possible. Like, put me in, coach. You know, you had me at hello if you're a Tom Cruise, Renee Zellweger fan, right? And that's not for everyone. I'm not saying everyone needs to be at the beginning sort of the adoption curve, but I am definitely impatient to the point of it actually aiding and abetting my curiosity and my learning. And I think I'm comfortable in my skin, back to the sort of the original point, you know, that you made in the intro. I'm okay with it. And I'm okay with the reprimands and the slaps on the wrist as well. But that's where the courage and conviction and gumption comes from. You have to be comfortable in your own skin and be confident that not everything's going to work out your way, but let's go and do it anyway. Let's give it a shot. Let's be somewhat professionally impatient.
I love that. Professional impatience. What a great, have you used that phrase before, by the way?
No, I'm very extemporaneous. So when I do things like this with smart people like you, I find that, you know, I get to gel a little more.
Trademark the damn thing right now, my kind sir. It belongs to you. Honestly, it's a fantastic thought. Professional impatience, and the fact that you even, you know, took the time to clarify and carve out the fact that it's different from personal impatience. Well, I'm getting impatient because I want to get to buy, lead, care, win, how to become a leader who matters. You know, there are actually a bunch, and this is when, look at all these wonderful changes. We're just it's a tapestry, it's a mosaic, it's a collage of colors and a blueprint for success. But there's a couple of things that are pretty serious as well. You know, and Robert Collins says he loves professional impatience, but he actually speaks about this idea of resign to resignation is not a business inevitability, more lack of leadership, career empathy, and growth opportunity. I feel like he may have just, you know, leaned in and spied on the Google Doc, because these are the very things that you wanted to talk about. You wanted to talk about. Is this crazy? You wanted to talk about the Great Resignation. You wanted to talk about the lack of leadership or the inability for leadership to stay out in front. And you wanted to talk about empathy. So I'm done. Just talk, Dan, for the next 20 minutes.
You know, well, first of all, I know we're trying to prop up the JAFFE economy. So does Robert get a JAFFE coin? That's really, I want to know the answer to that, Joseph.
Damn straight he does.
Okay, good.
He has been a loyal viewer.
This is all about the JAFFE economy. That's why I'm here. I'm just here to.
No, it's all about us. It's all about us. And I'll even send you a JAFFE coin, Dan.
Can't wait. I hope there's a shirt too. Okay, so here's the deal, right? And I don't know who it is, and my apologies because I've forgotten his name. But there's an associate professor somewhere in Texas that, you know, comes up with the moniker the Great Resignation. And then mainstream media, social media, and your mom's media picks it up, and everyone's talking about this thing. I mean, that's, I guess, fine. It's sort of, to me, is like pet rock, though. It's kind of like Rubik's Cube. It's a bit of a fad, and here's why. There's actually 4 things going on, and the Great Resignation is an outcome of all 4. So in no particular order, and as you've noted in... Here's a good time for this. As you've noted in this, what a really good book that Joseph put out, Built to Suck, which I sucked up as a voracious reader. Look at that, there's even sound effects. So that gets me a JAFFE coin, I'm sure. So the 4 things I think that are happening are, first of all, what I would call, just to play off of this whole great thing, the Great Degradation. Now that's a fancy word, I suppose, but the degradation I'm talking about is circa 1970. And since 1970, particularly in the Western world, particularly in America, we have seen the split of incomes from, senior leaders, executives in particular, to us, regular people. And that has a lot to do with shareholder primacy theory. It has a lot to do with, as you've noted in your book, right, short-termism, and the analysts and everyone fixated on EBITDA and profitability and so forth. So the Great Degradation, I believe, started in 1970, but it hasn't ended. And it's the degradation of our humanity, our souls, our me, my me inside an organization. It's just been sucked out of us. And we can get more into that, but that's just number one. So the Great Degradation. Number two, I'll call the Great HR Ineptness. So HR referring to human resources, of course. And I came from there, so I am probably slagging a bunch of my friends if they're tuning in on this one. But the great HR ineptitude or ineptness is, here we are with the Great Resignation. We've got what? We've got 10 million open jobs, and we've got like 15 million people that could fill them. The great HR ineptness, begins with things like automation and AI in the application process. We are, by virtue of using AI and automation and that type of fake intelligence, we, HR, are weeding out very good people from the get-go. Because they're never making it to the interview stage, because all these good people who have, Joseph, transferable skills are being whacked by a machine. And so that's a problem. But then you've got HR who are aiding and abetting executives to help create that great degradation. The big deal for HR, Joseph, is, we got a seat at the table. Well, screw you. You need to be the table. Like, HR needs to be more than just sitting at the table. They've got to actually push back and say, why are we behaving and acting this way? Why are we degrading the souls of our people? That's where the bollocks comes in. So that's kind of number two. Number three, as is rather evident.
I got to stop you. I got to stop you for 1 second.
Sure.
I just got to call a little bit of genius when I see it. First of all, let's just say, by the way, this is the Great HR Ineptination. They have to end with the word. It's the resignation. It's the degradation, and it's the ineptination. You're welcome. Call this free consulting. What do they say? First prize is 1 hour with me. Second prize is 2 hours with me.
Double the rate. Yeah.
Yeah. Or half. I love, in all seriousness, I love that point. Instead of, stop worrying about, getting a seat at the table, be the table. That's a brilliant point. It really, really is, and expand it, right, as well. So anyway, keep going. And remember, it has to end with the word nation.
Okay. Well, it just changes everything now. But you know what? I'm as I say, extemporaneous. I can move on the fly, my friend. So the third, I'll call now the great unpreparation. I was kind of going to try to use unpreparedness, but you know what? It's got to end in a shun. So the great unpreparation. And this is where the pandemic comes into play finally, and this kind of notion of, well, people are resigning. Well, yeah, hello, duh. Why? Well, we've talked about the degradation, we've talked about HR and nation, and now the unpreparation, right, is like leaders have had years to figure out flexible work and to figure out that it's not about foosball tables and, free tacos. It's about how we treat our people and what is the working culture model. I mean, for any organization pre-pandemic to not have a flexible work model was just like bonker asinine to me. Do people need to commute 45 minutes a day to go into an office where they sit there with their AirPods on and a little sign behind their chair that says, F off, I'm busy? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So we were ill-prepared in nation for the pandemic. And now in the pandemic, although we had, 3 months of empathy last year, Now these organizations are like, where's everyone going? Why is half of San Francisco moving to Austin or Omaha? Like
Because
what
Austin's weird. That's why.
it's 9/9, man. See, it's 9/9 day. Austin,
9/9.
shout out to you. Anyway, so the unpreparation is pretty evident. And then the fourth, we're not even, again, Great Resignation is the outcome of all this. Fourth is the Great Awakening. And the Great Awakenation, I guess I'll call it the Awakenation. There we go. See? The Great Awakenation. The nation has awoken. And they've awoken to their agency, Joseph. People now realize that they've got free will, not Free Willy. That's a different thing. That's a movie. But they've got free will.
I can also play this free association. They have they awoke to wokeness though? That's the question.
I don't. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So actually, let's. Now that I'm thinking about it, we were all caged orca whales. Tanked. We were tanked orca whales. And all of a sudden now we're playing out our own version of Free Willy. So this whole notion of free will choice, what's really important to me? I want to see my kids more, or I do want to work out more, or I don't mind putting in laundry during the day. Like I want choice, creativity, flexibility. It's my life. I don't want to end up 6 feet under on my epitaph that said, I guess I worked a lot. And so I don't think people don't want to work hard, Joseph. And I think that they definitely want to have a higher sense of purpose in what they do, which is creating some of this consternation. But I'll tell you, the Great Awakenation is the fourth of the four greats that really we need to pay attention to. All of it creating this so-called blasted Great Resignation. How's that?
Well, and also the word consternation probably comes up somewhere in that conversation, because corporations are needing to rethink, and very quickly. But by the way, I mean, maybe Robert Collins wins because he said preparation HR and needed ointment after the not delivering on the submitted culture award statement. So I think Robert wins, doesn't he?
He wins. Yeah, it's mic drop.
So, well, you had another mic drop moment in there. I mean, there were many, but when you spoke about 3 months of empathy, that was, I always say that when you do this every day of your life, almost every day of your life, and you hear from so many incredibly smart people, when things are different or things stand out, and it doesn't happen often, they really do, they hit you over the head. And as guest number 276, you are producing a whole bunch of them. My cup runneth over. But 3 months of empathy. Why is it that you had all these leaders, kind of drinking the empathy Kool-Aid, like immersing themselves in this new way to essentially lead, care, and win, exhibit so many of these principles, and then go back to their old ways and their bad habits? Why was it not in fact sustainable and by definition scalable?
Are we allowed to swear here? I forgot to ask you in the green room.
Yeah.
You bleep it out. Okay.
No,
Excellent.
you can no that I can bleep myself out. You can swear.
Okay, so when Friday the 13th last year happened, my theory is that humanity was scared shitless for the first time since maybe 9/11. And there was a whole, but it was a systemic worldwide thing, right? But let's just talk Western world for most of this audience will listen into, and they were scared shitless on that day. Pandemic, NBA shut down, Tom Hanks, Woody from Toy Story has it. Like, what the hell is happening? And so when they started to grapple with their own humanity, they thought, oh, maybe I should, because I've got kids at home or not, I've got a partner or a spouse or, less or better half at home, whatever. But my dad's got it, the COVID. My neighbor's got it. I just saw someone, get trucked away on an ambulance. Why are there ambulatory ships in Manhattan? You know, there was a freak out stage that created the greatest dose of empathy by necessity. And however, as people's patience and politics and, you know, ingrained habits came to the fore through the end of June. And then, you know, there was the pandemic's over moment / movement. And it's been like that ever since, because what's happened? Well, the whole world shut down-ish. And we've been trying to recover from that. But what are we trying to recover from? That's the point, is that people went back to, well, we got to get back to where we were on March the 12th, because March the 13th sucked. Friday the 13th, pandemic, you know, Rudy Gobert, Utah Jazz, what the hell is going on with the NBA? The NHL shut down. Like, and again, now it's like, oh, okay, well, NBA is playing in a bubble, NHL is playing in a bubble. We got to get back to work. Let's get people back to, like, we've got to get back and hit our numbers, people. And that is the point, is that executives and senior leaders make it almost always about the numbers. And when that's your motive, that's why you're in business, you will win. But what are you winning at? And
so what cost?
At what cost? Exactly. And what are we finding now? We're finding that leaders like the Satya Nadellas of Microsoft, you know, aka the Captain Empathy, are winning. But there are others that are losing. And as you can see from the Apple II movement over down the street, down the state, if you will, down another state into Apple, you know, there's a bit of an uproar going on behind the scenes, if not in front of the scenes now at Apple, because of some decisions that are being made that aren't thinking about human agency, purpose, why are we really here? And it's really a disaffected lot that are starting to rise up. Now, that's a Microsoft Apple thing, right? Let's just think about the non-celebrity companies and that's really where I would argue my work. It's like trying to reach the middle-size, medium-sized business, the small-size business. Like, why are we here? What are you in business for? You know, like 5,000 people or less. And that's kind of the point. What were you trying to achieve going into the pandemic? Did you have enough time to reflect during your empathy state? I hope so. But ask yourself now the existential question, Joseph. Like, okay, why are we now in business? Do we want to continue to degrade? Do we have an HR set of misfit leaders in there not doing enough to just be at the table? Are we more prepared potentially in a post-pandemic, post-COVID world to actually offer flexibility and agency to our people? And ultimately, are we awake as leaders to what's going on? And if we do that, then I think, you know, you're much like Dan Price of Gravity Payments, a CEO who I interviewed for my second book 6 years ago, because he said, I'm dropping my $1 million salary down to 70K and I'm raising everyone else in the company's salary to 70K. And he did that because he said it's the right thing to do. And they have tripled their revenue, quadrupled their profits, they've doubled their revenue or their employee size, and they bought a company in Idaho. And he's not out to do anything more than to serve his customers, his employees, and the community writ large. And that's stakeholder capitalism. So we really want to get it. If we want to get into this, Joseph, we think about a year and a half ago when the Business Roundtable unleashed their, you know, the purpose of business is to be a purposeful company nonsense. And 181 of those CEOs signed the thing. Okay, show me the purpose.
To take care of all stakeholders, right? Not just the external shareholders. That's what they came up with. But now I want to give you the quote of the, you know, I always find a quote for my guests, and this was just a very simple one. It was less about the profoundness of the actual quote or even the person who said it, Jack Canfield, you know, author of you know, Chicken Soup for the Pontefract. But he said, to change habits, we must study the habits of successful role models. So you've given us two examples Sacha, you've given us also a Dan Price, who, by the way, if you know him personally, I would love for him to come on the show. But who else would you say are the leaders, the successful role models that got the memo? Look, Dan, people might think we've known each other all our lives. But I honestly think like this is like ridiculously simpatico. It's like weird, actually. But you had another mic drop moment there, which was from, right, why are we in business, to why are we now in business? It's the now. It's such an important it's such an important shift. So I would love for you to share a couple of other leaders that get it, that are getting it, and have got it.
That goes back to highlighting celebrities, and I don't find a lot of celebrity leaders doing it, because if I say a name, people are like, oh, I know that name. And I'm talking about examples in communities, in small, medium-sized businesses that did and are doing the right thing. For example, I live 3 blocks away from a restaurant called the Village Restaurant. It employs about 20 people. 5 people are full-time and the 15 people are part-timers. When the pandemic hit, the restaurant was shut down. But then the owner, Jill, got everyone together and asked, hey, so how do we stay in business? And by about 3 weeks later, they had cobbled together an online ordering system for 2 facets of their business. And this is where we need to be thinking about why we're now in business. So Jill not only set up through hook or by crook, the online ordering system, which they didn't have before. So they could, actually, people could show up, you put the meals in the back of the trunk or whatever, and you take off. This is where this is exactly my point. The second one is she started thinking about the farmers in the community where I live. And when she was thinking about the farmers, she's like, well, how are they going to get access now to customers, because all the restaurants are either shut down or been hold down or what have you. And Jill set up a market system so that customers of the Village Restaurant not only could buy breakfast and lunch or whatever, but on a separate part you can order food direct through an intermediary, her, of the farmers and the butchers and everyone that they order. They're suppliers.
Mm.
So you could go there and you could get like a basket of tomatoes, or you could get, and still can get, because it's kept going, right? She thought about others. So her team, how do we keep this going? And the farmers who are filling up the veg and the produce and the, and the meats. And I'm like, that's the type of thinking we need. That's the stakeholder capitalism I'm getting at. That's the how are we in business for now comment. So I would rather highlight the individuals who actually are doing it for the stakeholder mindset. The purpose of why we're in business is to create and keep a customer. That's Peter Drucker, right? But if you append that to it, I also believe that the purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer, but it's also to act with purpose. And when you act with purpose, that delivers your human agency. That gives you the gumption, ultimately, to go back to when we just started, was, can I be creative? Can I be innovative? Can I be curious? And can I get stuff done?
The purpose of this show is to move into Tom Morris's wisdom and philosophy slot. But before we do that, I see Jill, and I raise you what I'm going to call Jillonomics, but a new term. This one I'm keeping: vertically integrated empathy. That's
whoa.
What we need.
That is amazing.
You just say the words and I just type them. But vertically integrated empathy, that's really what Jill did. And that is Jillonomics. Forget about, servant leadership or servant capitalism. There is so much more to where Dan Pontefract came from. For example, you can just go to his website and find out these 9 leadership lessons, the cheat sheet. There's so much more. please go out there and become a part of this revolution. You know ways to contact him, but most importantly, go out there and buy Lead, Care, Win. How to Become a Leader Who Matters. Just go to danpontefract.com/book/lead, care, win. And you can also download that beautiful little cheat sheet. Dan, just before we go, and we're about to go, but before we do, let's listen in. Oh, you know what? Actually, before we do that, here's what I want you guys to do, because there are about 15 minutes left. I want you to go to this URL right now and vote for Mariah. She stands a chance to win $10,000 and perform at the Hollywood Bowl. And I forgot to do this at the beginning, but there are about 15 minutes left before voting closes. Just go and do it right now. Please, please, please go and vote for her before you hear her perform. You know, and once she performs, if she's amazing, you'll be like, I'm so glad I did. And if she's not great, then you'll be like, well, it's too bad because you voted anyway. So who cares? Just go and vote for her. Go and do that now, please. But here is Mr. Tom Morris delivering our little segment, our Thursday segment on philosophy and wisdom. And the man, you know, and the man is just fantastic. But you know what? There's so much to do. Actually, sorry, Tom, screw that. Let's just welcome Mariah into the show. There's too much going. Dan, I'll see you in a few minutes. Go and hang out, get a beverage. There goes Dan. Here comes Mariah. Mariah, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm just, you know, I'm just drunk on all these Pontefractisms, but welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You know, you were so excited to be on the show, and I'm excited that you are on the show.
Me too.
I'm going to let you perform. I'm going to jump into the background. Tell us a little bit about the two numbers, and then we'll welcome you back, and I will flash a whole bunch of ways that people can vote for you, that they can send you tips, that they can get in touch with you. Then we'll get Dan back, and we'll have a party.
Awesome. Sounds great. All right. Well, my name is Mariah Ray, and I'm about to play a mashup for you. I put 3 songs by Mariah Carey for the first one, and then the second song I'm going to play is a song that I wrote. So this is my Mariah Carey mashup, and here we go. When I said I didn't love you so, should've had on time, never should've let you go. Didn't know nothing, I was stupid, I was foolish, I was lying to myself. Never imagined I'll be sitting here without your love. Never imagined I'll be sitting here beside myself. Cause I didn't know you, cause I didn't know me, but I thought I knew everything. I never failed. Nothing, I don't feel it now that I don't hear your voice. Was it just a kiss and lips, cause I don't have a choice. I wouldn't give to have you here, I ain't by my side right here. Cause baby, when you left, I lost a part of me. Is it so hard to believe? Come back, baby, please, cause we belong together. But I gotta shake it off, cause my love, it ain't the same. And you keep on playing games like you know I'm here to stay. Just like a cat back on one life. I better eat and go somewhere. Gotta make that move for somebody who appreciates whatever I give for. I gotta shake it up, gotta do what's best for me. Baby, and that means I gotta. But if you touch my body, put me on the floor, messing me around, then play on me some more. Yeah, touch my body, let me want my curves. Then come on and give me what I deserve, because we belong together. Right, don't you do? I gotta shake it up. Thank you so much. That is my mashup, and it's gonna.
That was awesome, and I will let you do. This is an original song, right? Coming up next.
This next one, yes. Yes, sir. Oh, can I go ahead and go? My bad.
I'm not
Well,
getting any younger. No, I'm kidding.
Me neither,
Go for
so
it.
I'm with you on that. Well, this song is called Wishful Thinking. It's on all platforms, so go ahead and check it out. It's a music video on YouTube. Mariah Rain with an E. And you show right. Okay, and this is called Wishful Thinking. Thank you so much. We lay it down, you pull me towards you. You lock eyes with me, then put my hands where I can't adorn to. The trust in your eyes, when my hands are your thigh. And you whisper, I love you, but yeah, I try to ignore you. Then I'll bite your lip just to keep you quiet. Then I hear you gasp when you're breathing heavily and a passion rises. A certain way you're going, and you said that she's back. Too many distractions for you to stay. But no, I guess that trying was my only mistake. But then you just wrapped your arms around me, call me baby. Love is so surrounding, your love against save me. I'm so speechless when you do the things that you do. So when you go to me, I wish you chose me. I'm just stuck with wishful thinking. I wish for thinking, wishful thinking, wishful thinking. Stop and just listen to me, 'cause I'm not crazy. Don't just pull away from me 'cause you're scared. 'Cause see, I'm tired of lying alone, knowing that you wanna come back home. But I tried and I tried again, and you're slipping from my hands. You said this love could be our last chance. This love could be our last chance. This love could be our last chance. But then you just wrap your arms around me, call me baby. Love is so surrounding, your love against save me. I'm so speechless when you do the things that you do. So when you go to me, I wish you chose me. I'm just stuck with wishful thinking. I wish for thinking, wishful thinking, wishful thinking. So you wanna say goodbye, not goodbye to me. You said you wanna let go. Well, it's not happening, because you just wrapped your arms around me, call me ha, baby. Your love is so surrounding, your love against save me. I'm so speechless when you do the things that you do. So when you go to me, I wish you choose me. I'm just stuck with wishful thinking, wishful thinking, oh, wishful thinking, wishful thinking. Whoa. Thank you so much.
Amazing. I've brought Dan back. That was amazing.
Thank you. Hi, Dan.
2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up, Mariah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all.
All right, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a break, and then I thought, we did something different tonight. Let's hear what Tom has to say, and then we can all comment on Tom, or we can ignore him, and we can comment on you, Mariah Hooser, right? As in
Mariah, who's your daddy?
As in the Who's Your Daddy state. Here is Tom Morris presenting a little bit of wisdom and philosophy, as if we actually needed any more after listening to Dan and listening to you, Mariah. So I'll tell you one thing with Tom. There's no wishful thinking when it comes to his wisdom. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hey, everybody. I want to bring you what may be the greatest piece of advice ever given for powerful goal setting and for successful living. It was said in the ancient world by the pre-Socratic philosopher Thales, and his words were repeated throughout history, even inscribed in marble at the holiest spot in ancient Greece, the oracle at Delphi. Thales said, whatever your opportunity, whatever your challenge, job one is always the same. Know yourself. Know yourself. You know, an ancient historian tells us that Thales was approached for advice about living because of his wisdom and his wealth in the ancient world. And one man asked him, Thales, what's the hardest thing in the world? You know what Thales said? To know yourself. The man said, okay, so what's the easiest thing in the world? You know what Thales said? To give people advice like this. Well, we'll pass by that one. Question number 3, what's the most satisfying thing in the world? You know what Thales said? True success. Wait a minute, if true success is the most satisfying thing in the world, and if it depends on self-knowledge, which is the hardest thing in the world, no wonder real success is so elusive in people's lives. A friend of mine likes to say that most of the problems of the world are due to a lack of 2 things, self-awareness and self-management. If you don't know yourself, if you're not aware of your emotions and attitudes and even your tone of voice and your body language, you can cause problems in the world that you don't want to cause. But then you have to manage yourself well based on this self-knowledge in order to attain the things that you want to see happen in the world around you. You know, success is always an inside job. Work on that self-knowledge, that inner awareness and the management of that self you've come to know, and everything gets easier. Take it from me, the ancients were right. Self-knowledge is never a one-at-a-time accomplishment, but it's a lifetime endeavor.
I have no idea what he said there, but what I will say is that yesterday on last night's show, Leslie we discussed self-acceptance, and I just love all of these selfisms that have come to bear. Mariah, let's put you into the pound seat right now, and I'm also just going to share this comment as well, which is Loki 100 says, pure talent, Alabama love for you. But what do we think? What do we think about what Tom had to say? Dan, what did you think about Mariah? I turn it over to you guys.
I'm reminded of Socrates, to be honest. To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom, Joseph. And clearly, Mariah knows herself by writing lyrics like she just did there. So with that, I think I would also encourage people, as many philosophers do, is to declare their purpose. And so if, you know, in the case of Socrates, he said, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. He knew he was full of wisdom. What's your declaration of what your full of wisdom is, and what's your purpose? And I'll leave you with this, Joseph. First of all, thank you again for the invitation. But my purpose, my declaration of purpose is this little pithy statement I've been using for probably the last 20 years. We're not here to see through each other. We're here to see each other through. Over to you.
Beautiful. Mariah, what are your thoughts?
Well, yes, I agree with the whole finding yourself and know yourself, because it took me a minute but I love who I am, and I love the fact that it took me a little bit of time to figure it out, but now I know who I am and I love who I am, and I believe that I appreciate everybody who's here. I just gotta have to say something about 100. I appreciate your comment, and thank you so much for always being there, and thank you also for letting me be on your show as well. And Tom, it was kind of staticky, but I heard what you said, and I totally agree.
Well, I mean, you know, in trying to reinvent the talk show, I reinvented myself. And, you know, it wasn't until just now that I kind of realized that my narrative was, in 2020, I reinvented myself. In 2021, I'm going to reinvent the talk show. And what I realized is I had it backwards, that it was actually in, you know, just doing it, right? Just as what Dan was saying at the beginning, without overthinking it, just by executing it, even as, you know, an amateur that had no business doing this, that I was on this path, you know, to reinvention. Mariah, what's next for you?
Either this opening act competition, if you voted for me, I appreciate y'all. That's what's next. But not only that, I'm actually going to be auditioning for The Voice as well. This on the 23rd.
Nice.
Thank you. And other than that,
Amazing.
keep writing, and I'm just gonna keep pursuing my dream because I'm never gonna give up. So.
Well, please don't. I would turn my chair in a heartbeat. And we wish you luck. Stay close to the show. Robert says, Mariah, your voice rings through and true. But you know whose voice really counts at the end of the day? It is, of course, Chuck Norris's. And what did Chuck have to say about Tom, about Mariah, and Dan?
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. I will be back on Monday. Take care, Mariah, and my new best friend, Dan. I will see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.